Hello, and thanks for tuning in to the Beyond 50 radio program. I'm Devin DeCuna. Many young adults are living at home in this sluggish economy, forcing parents to take care of their own grown children instead of going on vacations and doing hobbies that parents like to do once their kids are out of the house. After years of research and using her hands-on approach, Ellen Gibran-Hesse, author of Failure to Launch, How to Get Your Teens and Young Adults to Independence, joins us on the program. Ellen, thanks for being on the show today.
Oh, you're most welcome.
Now, Ellen, as everybody knows, the economy is hard on almost everybody right now, especially on young adults. How do these people make it out on their own?
Well, you know, this trend of young adults living at home has been going on for over 10 years. A third of them have been living at home from ages 25 to about age 36 since the last census, not the recent one, but the one before that. So the problem is that we need to get them job skills and in thinking of careers. And that's where parents have typically fallen down. They've just focused on college. So, you know, if you start focusing that way on where's your career, where's your job, and start with the entry level, because, of course, most kids graduating from high school or college think they're coming in at management level. You know, you need to set realistic expectations.
Mm. And I know some of my friends who are a couple weeks away from graduating college but are worried because they have nothing to look forward to. Some have no jobs to go to, while others will be going back to work because they can't pursue their desired career because of whatever reason. What would be your advice to those people?
I get a lot of those clients. The problem is that first, they may not have ever done any entry-level work, and they're going to have to understand that you've got to start with entry-level work. And actually, those jobs are a lot easier to find than you might think. And unfortunately, it means you might have to stay home a little longer, but you need to now start setting a roadmap for where your career is going to go. Usually, the focus has been on the college degree, or, you know, the end result of a degree. Now you have to start focusing on job skills, getting in, putting your time in, and that's a long process. But that is something that, you know, a lot of times young people in the past have always turned to their parents. Their parents have turned to friends for connections. You now have to learn about networking. If you can't find a job in the area that you're really looking for, I suggest internships that they may be unpaid for a while. But then once you start building your resume, and you really need to focus on the resume, how to build it, how to make it strong, and how to start having references. And young people don't understand. You need to network. You need to put the time in. You need to have the references. And a lot of times, and I have seen this with a lot of young people, because I've got a 22-year-old and a 25-year-old, the young people think, well, if I just go back to college. No, you need to focus on what it's going to take for that career. It may require some technological training. It may need some certification. You need to find out what specifically the education is going to do for your career. You can't just sort of assume you show up with a degree and people are jumping out to hire you. So you really need to do your research. You need to start working connections. It has to be a whole new focus of this is a job, this is a career, and, you know, it's a step-by-step process.
You know, Ellen, one of the things that I find interesting is, let's say a young adult is still living with their parents. They find something they like and they want to buy it. Whose responsibility is it to pay for that item? Is it the parent or the young adult?
Oh, wow. This is another area that parents have really screwed up on. Young adults should be in their teens managing their money. They should have responsibility for paying for some of the bills, because that's a real life skill that we're lacking for our young adults. And, you know, when people have said to me, well, I don't charge them rent, I say you need to charge them some rent, because they need to start learning how to manage that money. The bills are a huge part of life, and, you know, they need to start being responsible for that. And I've had parents say, well, I pay for the cell phone, but it's so expensive. I said, no, there's some cheap options out there. Let them start out with the cheap option. If they can go on to afford the more expensive, great. But they need to start setting those goals for the things that they want and the things that they have to pay for. And it's real important that they start, you know, even just a little bit of rent or one small bill but start realizing they've got to step up to the plate, because that's life and that's reality. It is not, you're not a child anymore where mom and dad hand you everything, and I really encourage even allowances early on, just to start paying for things and learning you have to save, you have to delay gratification. That's a huge life skill, and again, we as parents have fallen down on that one.
Yeah. And then what would be some things parents can do to get their kids to learn about gaining independence and avoid their child from still living at home once they're an adult?
Well, if you start early on, and I really believe in this, you need to start in the teen years. They need to have jobs during high school, and I know a lot of parents are, well, let's just hold off and let them study so that they can get into a good college. No, they need to be developing job skills and life skills as teens, and that's a real natural biological drive of humans. Humans typically in the past, when you were a teenager, I mean, you were a full adult. You had a family. You were married young. You were working, and so biologically this has been a part of who we are. So I say, start working, start those entry-level jobs, start learning the responsibility. Parents need to make sure that they're starting to be responsible for some of their bills, and always make it a goal for your young adults and your teens that, you've got to think about where you're going to be as a young adult. You can't just sort of skip along through high school and skip along through college and skip along through, college years and then come out, with your graduate degrees going, oh, now what do I do? You need to start talking about, is this the kind of job you want? Do you what kind of things? Because as a teen and young adult, you're learning about yourself and where you're going to fit in the world. And we've kind of postponed that and kept our kids at middle school level, emotionally and socially, and we need to stop that.
And maybe just to go along with that, if a young adult is still living with their parents, is that a bad reflection on the parent?
I think that's what a lot of people feel. They just assumed that they had done, because I see this all the time, and when I do a seminar, it's very interesting to watch the parents kind of open up, because they've always felt like everybody else's kid is independent or close to it, and I must have failed. But that's not the case. We've got so many young adults living at home, and I've got them into their 30s and 40s. So we're not even talking young adults either. And it's like, the parents are too afraid. They felt they did all the right things. They gave their kids everything. They sent them to colleges. Frequently, the kids don't make it through college, and then they're ashamed of that because they assume everybody's going to college, and they don't know what else to do. And, I really think there's a huge shame factor involved. And, we need to stop and say, no, this is a cultural phenomenon. We've done the wrong thing as parents. Well-intentioned, it's very well-intentioned. You want the best for your child. But we took away their ability to acquire life skills and acquire what they need to be a successful, independent adult. And so they're not. And, we've really fallen down on the job. And they're hungry to be independent. People blame the young adults for being lazy and all of that. That's not true. They want to be independent. They want a sense of self-worth, and they're not sure how to get there. So it's really been a problem of parenting.
And then another thing, well, usually when you're a young adult, I know for me, when you're a young adult, you think you know everything, and then you try to get in your eyes. Yeah, it's like you just feel like you know everything, and then your parents say one thing, and then you say another thing, and then it turns into an argument. What would be ways to, for young adults and parents to get beyond arguing?
Yeah, that's a big problem too, because that's still in the parent and little child mode, and it needs to be moving beyond. That's why when teens are starting to go out into the work world, they're also learning how to interact on an adult level. So if you haven't had them out into the work world, they're not really understanding that. And what you need to do, most of my book, and I really want to do a second one, the first book is about creating the relationship, the adult-to-adult relationship. And you need to, as a parent, step back and say, okay, these are the rules, and you need to go over it with the kids too, so that you have a calm, assessment of the rules. You're going to be paying this amount of rent. It's not because I'm being mean. It's because you need to start learning to manage money. And then when you start to put these things out there as adult to adult, and you don't make the decisions for the kids. If you said one thing, Devin, and said, okay, I'm a little concerned about, that approach because of this and that, but, why don't you go ahead and try your approach? And, and I have found that working with young adults, they're more open to hearing because you've respected them, that you may have a different point of view. And, they're out there making a mistake on their own. It's all on them. And they start to have a real appreciation for being out there and making the mistakes. And they start to realize that maybe their parents know a little bit more than they thought they did. But if you reduce it to just emotional arguing, that's not an adult-to-adult relationship, and that's what you really want. You want to be able to go to your parents and get their point of view, but not have them telling you what to do, because you're not a child anymore. And, you're going to make mistakes, because you just haven't been out there yet. And those mistakes are going to be valuable to you. And that's the other thing. Parents are afraid to let their young adults make mistakes. Mistakes are critical to your learning. And actually, biologically, the young adult brain is still growing until about age 25, a little beyond sometimes. And during that time, it's the judgment center that is the neurons are growing into. So you need to learn to make those mistakes. You need to learn from them. That's a life process that's going to follow you forever. And, so making mistakes is a good thing. It is not a bad thing. And it's up to the parent to show you how to recover from those mistakes and recover your self-esteem. And that's what starts to create a real adult-to-adult relationship and a much better parent-child bond.
Right. And Ellen, when most people graduate high school, the next step is college. Unfortunately, not everybody goes to college. I know for me, I had some friends that did not go to college because either they felt like they weren't cut out for it or other factors got in the way. What can these people do to succeed if they decide not to go to college?
Well, this is the amazing thing, Devin, is that for every 100 kids going into high school, only 11 are going to come out with a 4-year degree. So that's practically 90% are not coming out with a 4-year degree. And our high schools are geared only for college. Now, I know a lot of ones are now starting what they call career tech. In fact, I sat on the board of our school district, and they're creating these phenomenal career tech units, like the biomed. There's they don't even call it engine and car repair anymore because engines are becoming so sophisticated. But there are whole technologies for this. And, this is really the growing way, and this is where the 90% should be focused. So, it's infuriating to me that high schools are making everybody feel bad if they don't go on to college, because only a small percent are going to go on and get that 4-year degree. And of those, 50% are going to go home and live with their parents without a job or a career in sight. So, that is just, college has its place, but it should be in conjunction with creating a job and a career. It should not be, the first step and then suddenly the job and career show up. It should be, moving towards that job and career and upward movement. So I really encourage, parents there's a lot of testing in the community colleges for, we call it aptitude testing. I guess it's called career testing now. But you can go in and you can find out what is kind of a good career strategy for you. And I do this frequently with my clients because, you don't know where you want to go. You don't know where you want to be. You don't know what these jobs entail. And so the testing will show you kind of where you need to be. Like the young man in my book that I had helped, we did this with him. And he was shocked because he's worked in retail since he was 14. So he just assumed he would be working in retail forever and move up in management, and he thought that was his career. But when we did the testing, it turned out that actually he should be in the medical arts. He's very compassionate. He's very interested in that, but he'd never seen himself as doing something like that. So then we started a plan for investigating which areas that might appeal to him because there's a tremendous amount of careers there. So, it's real important to sort of get that idea of what's a good match for you and then start figuring out how to acquire the career that you want in that area. And a lot of the community colleges are really good about that. I know I sat on the board with one of the administrators from community college. She's seeing tons of people coming in with 4-year degrees because they need certification to work in the fields that they want to be. So, it's really important to find out where you're a good match and then start figuring out how to acquire the skills, the certification, the training. And frequently, it's not college. And that's perfectly fine because generally you'll make more money anyway. So no problems there.
And then one of the things that stood out to me while reading the book is the basic list on the skills teens need to have. This was fascinating me, and it also scared me because I only accomplished half of the list when I was a teen. Now that I'm in my early 20s, I've crossed a few more off the list, but there's still some things I haven't mastered yet. How concerned should I be?
That's the ideal. You can acquire them at any time, and that's the thing is that, like I said, as a young adult, your brain is still developing. So
Right.
Take a look at what you need to acquire and work towards it. I mean, there's no failure here. It's just you need to be working if you're going to have things a little bit easier in life. That's the whole idea. Is I'm trying to get parents to look at skills and life skills, job skills, and help their young adults and their teen to acquire them. That should be the focus for us parents. And God bless you that you're self-motivated. Because it's very hard to do, and especially I have seen, and the literature has seen that, especially young males have a little trouble focusing and acquiring these sorts of things, and need a little more help in the direction. And the good news is that usually once a young man is focused, they go great guns that way. So it's real important as parents that we understand what it is that you need for personal development to become an independent and successful adult.
And Ellen, when you're a kid, you're expected to help your parents out with the house chores. But are you still expected to do so if you're a young adult still living at home?
Oh boy, do I get this a lot. Yeah, I really do. Yeah, I'll have the parents consulting with me. I have to clean up their room. I have to, sometimes they even have the young adults brought their children home and expect free babysitting. And, it's like, that's part of life skills is contributing to the family. And my website and my book have been banned in China, and I think the reason that it was is that I'm discouraging, young adults from living at home. I'm not saying don't do it, but it's harder, at least in our culture, because then the parents aren't doing a good job getting their kids to independence. In cultures like China, a lot of the Latino cultures also, you're expected to live at home until you get married. But, and I've talked to people about this, you're expected to contribute to the family. You're expected to go out and get a job. You're expected to contribute monetarily. You're supposed to help with the household chores. That's part of being an adult. So, I tell the parents it's important that, it's your house. If you want things kept a certain way, that's absolutely the rule, and if they don't like it, then they better figure out how to get out of the house. And, it's just part of being an adult, because otherwise you're back to being, a little kid and with the parents, and you get back to the bickering and the, because on one hand they want to be treated as adults, and on the other hand, they want parents to do everything for them, and it's like you can't do that. That's not healthy.
Mm-hmm.
So absolutely,
Oh, go ahead.
No, but and I think it should start early, like when kids are little. I made sure that my sons understood they were to keep their rooms neat, and of course you get into that whole battle because they're young. And I would say, okay, you can clean it up. You've got till Friday. If you don't, I'll come in and help you. And usually they didn't want me to come in and help. So it's like, and I did not expect it to be, perfect, but just neat and orderly so they could find things, and they, to this day they're very neat and orderly, and they don't want it any other way because it's more convenient for finding things, for knowing where things are, and it's just a much better way of learning organization.
So, while you were talking, I was picturing like a 30-year-old arguing with his mom about clean your room or go mow the lawn, and they get in this whole argument like, oh, I'm too big to do that. Yeah.
And another aside to that, and this is very common too, and it's something we don't like to talk about, is I get parents coming to me, and their adult children in their 30s, maybe 40s, and they've become abusive. The argument now has shifted because the parent is older, and the argument is now abusive. And I mean, I recently had one woman whose son every day threatens to kill her, and has hit his sister. And these are scary things. So it's really important to understand that you need to get the arguing out. And if you have an abusive situation, and I've counseled many a parent on this, you need to get them out even with the help of the police. This is not a good situation, but absolutely, Devin, the arguments can get pretty ugly, and the power has shifted, and it's very sad.
Mm. And then I'm sure the ideal dream for any.
Bring out that.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
I know it's a negative note, but I've seen it a lot, even to the point where parents are willing to move out of their house to get away from their kids.
Right.
So, this is something to be concerned about. If you don't get them to independence by age 30, things can get a little dicey, and you have to be very careful.
Mm-hmm. And then I'm sure the ideal dream for any college student once they graduate is to get a decent job and find their own place. Unfortunately, that's not their reality because it's such a competitive market out there, so they have to live at home. Would you agree with this?
Yeah, I am seeing more of it because it's not as much because I think the economy is starting to change. Recently, we had a young man, and he moved from the West Coast here to New York, and he was able to get 3 job offers. I mean, entry level, yes, but that's where it used to be. You'd have your pick, and then you'd start to move up, into whatever career you wanted, or jump into another one. And that's the ideal situation, that you can explore different jobs, different careers, and it would be so much better if you did that early, like in the teen years. But the entry-level jobs are out there, and that's important because most of the young adults have not been out there working, in any capacity. And internships, unpaid internships, that counts as work too. That goes on your resume, and that's connections. So, I really encourage that when people say, well, they can't find anything. I said, then they need to go do an unpaid internship because that, people will take you in for free. So it's just really, really important that they get out there in some capacity. And yes, you may have to live at home, and yes, things are going to be tight, but that's why you have a game plan of, you're going to get out in so many months, or, you're going to move up, and that's what's going to motivate you to get a better job.
Right. And then one of the things I was interested in is, do you feel parents need to develop an exit strategy to try to get their kids to move out of the house if they're getting too old to be living at home?
Absolutely. They absolutely need to be doing that. I mean, and I hate to tell you, that exit strategy should have started as teenagers. But when they've come home, you have to sit down, because a lot of times they just sort of expect, they'll figure it out for themselves, and that's not the case. Generally, they haven't a clue of how to figure it out for themselves. So they need to sit down, and I'm just amazed at how many times they have not had a conversation about it, because the young man that I helped to get to independence, we sat down and we said, okay, this is going to happen, in about 6 months. If we get to 6 months and it isn't happening, we'll reevaluate it. But these are the things that we need to accomplish. Like he was 19 and he didn't even have a driver's license. And so that was one of the things that we were going to have to do, because living outside of the city, the public transportation isn't very good. And so we needed to get that. We needed to, come up with some different ideas for him to acquire the job skills and the full-time job that he needed. And so we worked really hard on all of those things. And yes, in 6 months, he was out. And, I mean, if we'd had to go a little longer, we would have gone a little longer. but we both knew what the goal plan was. We both knew what had to happen to make it happen. And, we worked together as a team. And I think that's really powerful for young adults, is that when you're working together as a team. And I believe in even a lot of hand-holding along the way. If you're getting resistance, you've got somebody who's scared. So whenever I got resistance, I would say, okay, let's go, apply to these different jobs today. Let's go do this. Let's go do that. And we'd finish on, a light lunch out or, a little snack together and joke about it. But it was a team strategy. And eventually, he was going out on his own applying for jobs because it wasn't overwhelming anymore. He'd been out enough with me that he understood what it took. So, and the good news was he was excellent at interviews. So we just needed to get him through the initial paperwork. And there's just so many different ways now. You can go in and apply on their computer, apply online. Some still do paperwork. So it was good for him to learn the different modalities of applying for a job. And, that's really important is, the parents have stepped back way too much. It's like if you really have to handhold, that's okay. Everybody needs that support when they're encountering something new.
Yeah, and just to go along with that, one of the problems I find with parents is that they hold their kids' hands a little too much. They coddle them. They hold their hands. They're there to baby him, and it like kind of gets the kid in the bad habit because they think like, oh, okay, if everything goes wrong, I got my parents there. They bail me out instead of just saying, motivating them and developing skills to be independent. So,
right.
That's one of the problems I find in parents.
That's the helicopter parent. Yeah,
right.
The one that hovers too much, the one that's too involved. I'm talking about sort of being a supporter, not doing it for you, not, that is still treating you like a child. In being a supporter, like I said, if I get resistance, I know I've got somebody who's a little scared. And then you talk, and again you talk, okay, what's going on here? Do you want to do it or do you want me to do it? Because sometimes they just may need help setting a timetable. And it's like, okay, let me go with you. You fill it out, or, do you want me to help you here? And you're always asking and treating them like an adult making the decisions. And I'm there as sort of their assistant, and that's the attitude that you have to take is you're in charge, you're responsible. What would you like me to do? This needs to happen. Do you want to do it? Would you like me to do it? And that treats them as a young adult. It makes them responsible for the decision and for the process. And that's a lot different than the helicopter parents who, you're right, they just want to do everything and coddle them. And that's not bringing them the life skill that they need. And that's the difference. Is if you're doing it for them, you're depriving them of the skill that they need to have. And that's wrong.
Alan, is there a website where our listeners can find out more information about your book?
I'm sorry?
Is there a website where our listeners can find out more information about your book?
Yes, and the website is kidsoutnow.com. KIDSOUTNOW.com. And my book is available there, and it's also available on Amazon.
The title of the book is Failure to Launch, How to Get Your Teens and Young Adults Independent. Ellen, thanks for being on the show today.
My pleasure, Devin.
Listeners, remember to visit our website at www.beyond50radio.com and sign up for a free weekly newsletter. I'm Devin DeCuna, and remember to live your day past halfway.